In the silver-drenched realm of Nocturna, where the moon held two faces and ancient feuds ran deeper than bloodlines, two kingdoms stood divided by a forest of thorn and mist. On one side, the Lupin Peaks, ruled by Kael, the young alpha of the Fenrir pack. His power was not just in his formidable size, when man or wolf, but in the fierce loyalty he inspired. On the other, the Obsidian Spire, home to Seraphina, the only daughter of the vampire king, Mordred. Her beauty was as cold and sharp as ice, but her eyes held a curiosity about the world beyond her gilded cage. Their worlds were oil and water, fire and ice. Werewolves, children of the earth and moon, vampires, heirs of shadow and blood. A treaty, brittle with age, was the only thing that prevented all-out war, and it forbade any contact between their kinds. Their meeting was one of forbidden chance. Kael, patrolling the border woods in his wolf form, a massive beast with fur the color of storm clouds and eyes like molten gold, found a vampire huntress cornered by a monstrous, corrupted bear, twisted by a dark magic neither kingdom claimed. Duty warred with instinct. She was the enemy. But she was also outmatched. With a roar that shook the leaves, Kael launched himself at the beast. It was a brutal, savage fight, but the alpha's strength prevailed. As he stood panting over the carcass, he turned to find the vampire not fleeing, but standing her ground, a silver dagger in her hand, her gaze not fearful but awestruck. "Why?" Seraphina asked, her voice like the chime of crystal. "I am your enemy." In a shimmer of light, Kael shifted into his human form, tall and powerful. "No living thing deserves to be ended by such foulness," he said, his voice a low rumble. Enemy or not. In that moment, something shifted. They did not see a monster, but a person. They met in secret for months after, in a hidden glen deep in the thorn forest. He brought her moon-bloom flowers that glowed in the dark. She showed him constellations seen only from the highest towers of her spire. He was strength and warmth. She was grace and cunning. Their love was a quiet rebellion, a secret so beautiful it made the risk worth taking. But secrets in Nocturna were like sunlight to a vampire, they could not long survive. King Mordred discovered them and hated the bond immediately. He feared if he left the little fire unchecked, it would raise his empire and all he and his predecessor had bled to protect. The elders of the Round Table would see him as weak and incompetent, unable to handle his own wayward daughter. The great doors of the Obsidian Spire's throne room slammed shut with a finality that echoed through Seraphina's very soul. She had just returned from one of her memorable escapades in the borderlands Kael, and was now tiptoeing her way into her room, or so she planned. It was worth it. Kael was not the monster they thought he was. He was friendly, charming, and most importantly, he knew just where to touch to make her wet and thirsty for him. That night was one of those nights she would never forget in a very long time. As she passed through the hall into the lobby, she noticed a warm chill blasting down her cold veins. The air was ominous and still, thick with the scent of aged blood and polished stone. Before her, on a throne carved from a single block of black diamond, sat her father, Vlad, the vampire king. His face, usually a mask of cold authority, was contorted with a rage she had never seen. She couldn't run now. He had seen her. Shit, she sighed dejectedly. Explain this madness. His voice was a low, dangerous whisper, like the slide of a dagger from its sheath. In his long, pale fingers, he held a single moonbloom flower, its silver petals glaringly out of place in the gloom. A token from Kael, discovered by her father's spies. "It is not madness, father," Seraphina said, her voice steady though her heart hammered a frantic rhythm against her still ribs. "It is love. Maybe if I spoke from my heart, he would understand." The word seemed to physically strike him. He recoiled, then leaned forward, his crimson eyes burning. "Love? You speak of love with a beast? A creature of dirt and howls? He is not a suitor, Seraphina, he is prey. Our people have hunted his kind for sport for 1,000 years. And his have hunted ours," she fired back, her own temper flaring. "Good riddance to heart talks. The old hatreds are a poison, father. Can you not see? Kael is noble. He is strong, loyal. He is an animal, Vlad roared, shooting to his feet. The moon bloom fell from his hand, and he crushed it under the heel of his boot, grinding its silver light into the dark floor. Your union would be an abomination. A stain on our lineage that would never be cleansed. It would shatter the treaty and plunge us into a war we cannot afford. It wouldn't have to, she pleaded, taking a step forward. Our union could be the bridge to peace. Peace. He spat the word. There is no peace with predators. There is only dominance or submission. He descended the dais, his form seeming to grow taller, casting a long, chilling shadow over her. This folly ends now. You will forget the wolf. You will marry Egon. The name landed like a blow. Egon, the son of Elder Valen, a vampire of immense age and influence, but a creature as cold and calculating as a spider. He saw Seraphina not as a person, but as a key to the throne. Egon. Seraphina's composure broke, replaced by sheer horror. He is a snake. He cares nothing for me, only for the power a marriage would bring him. I would rather die than be bound to him for eternity. The silence that followed was more terrifying than the shouting. Her father's face went utterly still, the rage freezing into something far more deadly. Utter, unforgiving contempt. You would choose death, he said, his voice dropping to a venomous hiss. Over your duty to your family? Over your king's command. I choose a chance at real life over eternity in a gilded cage, she cried, her defiance ringing through the hall. That was the final insult. Her resolve, her rejection of his world and his values, was a deeper betrayal than any secret tryst. It was a rejection of him. You are a foolish, sentimental child, Vlad said, his voice dripping with icy disdain. You speak of life, but you understand nothing of power, of legacy, of survival. You are my daughter, my blood, and you will obey. He raised a hand. From the shadows, two of his elite guards, their faces impassive, emerged. Since you speak so fondly of cages, Vlad declared, his words striking her with the force of physical chains, you shall have one. You will be taken to the highest tower. You will have no window to the moon he loves so much. No company. You will remain there until your senses return to you, or until the sun itself burns out. And you will marry Egon. Father, no. Seraphina struggled as the guards took her arms, their grip like iron. You cannot do this. I am your king, he said, turning his back on her, the ultimate dismissal. I can, and I have. Let the darkness remind you of who you are, or let it break you. The choice is yours. As they dragged her away, her cries echoing down the hollow corridors, the last thing she saw was her father's unmoving back, a monument of cold pride and ancient hatred, more impenetrable than any tower wall. The door to her prison cell sealed shut, not with a lock, but with a powerful enchantment, plunging her into a silence so complete it was its own form of torture. Her love had been declared a war, and her father had just taken the first prisoner. The guards locked Seraphina away, declaring the treaty broken. He accused the werewolves of kidnapping and corrupting his daughter. Kael, defending his actions before his own council, was called a traitor, a fool led by a pretty face. The ancient rubble of hatred collapsed between them, burying their secret glen. War was imminent. On the eve of the first battle, as both armies gathered at the thorn forest, a third force emerged. It was the source of the corrupted bear, a cabal of sorcerers, the Order of the Eclipse, who had been manipulating both kingdoms for years. They had fueled the hatred, hoping to weaken both sides so they could conquer a divided Nocturna. The corrupted bear had been their test, and the lovers' meeting, a fortunate accident they had exploited. The sorcerers unleashed their true army, legions of mindless, twisted creatures, born of dark magic, upon both werewolf and vampire lines. Caught off guard, the ancient enemies began to fall. Kill them all, Malachar roared, from behind his cursed hounds. Make them pay for desecrating our land and turning our homes desolate. Malachar's veins rippled with excitement, seeing his beasts doing damage to both forces failing to keep up with his furious arsenal. He laughed humorless, as the memories of the beginning, reeled into his memory. Long before the lupin peaks cast their shadows or the obsidian spire pierced the clouds, the land of Nocturna was ruled by a different magic entirely: the Sun and Moon Covenant. This was a golden age of balance, where day and night held equal power, and the ancient order of sorcerers known as the Stellarians were its guardians. They drew their power from the harmonious equilibrium between light and dark, and under their guidance, the land flourished. The Stellarians were not just powerful, they were revered. But their golden age was shattered by the Great Schism, the arrival of the Cursed Ones. First came the vampires, refugees from a dying world, their essence transformed by a terrible ritual to survive in our sun-drenched realm. They built the obsidian spire, a structure that channeled and amplified the night, creating a perpetual shroud over their lands to block the sun they now feared. Then emerged the werewolves, not arrivals but awakenings. A primal spirit of the moon, enraged by the vampire's artificial night and the imbalance it created, touched a clan of ancient warriors. It gifted them the fury of the beast to serve as the moon's protectors, the natural counterbalance to the encroaching darkness. To the Stellarians, these new species were abominations. The vampires were perversions of life, creatures who consumed it rather than nurtured it. The werewolves were forces of chaotic, untamed nature. Most grievously, their very existence broke the balance. The vampire's eternal night and the werewolf's raw lunar fury created a discordant schism in the magical fabric of Nocturna, a schism that severed the Stellarians from their primary source of power. The pure, balanced magic of the sun and moon was now polluted, out of reach. Overnight, the revered sorcerers found their strength waning. They were made obsolete, their wisdom ignored as the too powerful, young species rose to dominance, clashing with each other and reshaping the world to their needs. The Stellarians were cast down from their celestial observatories, their libraries buried, their influence forgotten. They became ghosts, whispering in the corners of a world that had moved on without them. Generations of bitterness festered. The Stellarians, now calling themselves the Order of the Eclipse in defiance of the sun and moon that had abandoned them, plotted in the shadows. Their goal was not merely conquest, but correction. They believed the world was sick, infected by the vermin of vampire and werewolf. Their desire was a great cleansing. From her tower, Seraphina saw the true enemy. She used her cunning, picking the lock not with strength, but with a hairpin, and escaped. Kael, seeing his pack being torn apart by unnatural beasts, knew this was not the fight he was meant to wage. On the chaotic battlefield, under a moon stained with smoke, they found each other. Not as Alpha and Princess, but as Kael and Seraphina. "This is the real enemy," Kael yelled over the roar of battle, his wolfen form bristling. "Our fight is a lie," Seraphina agreed, her eyes flashing crimson. "Only together." Their unity was the key. He was strength without cunning. She was strategy without brute force. Separately, they were leaders. Together, they were unstoppable. Kael howled, a call not of war, but of alliance. It was a sound that commanded his pack's very soul. Seraphina's voice, sharp and clear, cut through the chaos, rallying her kin. "Look to the true foe, or we all fall tonight." It was a desperate gamble. But the sight of their leaders, the mighty Alpha and the vampire princess fighting back to back, protecting each other, became a beacon. A werewolf shielded a vampire from a magical blast. A vampire cut down a beast leaping for a wolf's back. The air was thick with the coppery scent of blood and the ozone crackle of dark magic. The battlefield was a charnel house, a nightmare painting of clashing red, vampire, and gray, werewolf, against the sickly, pulsating purple of the Order's abominations. Hope was a dying ember. Kael, a mountain of storm-furred muscle and fury, was on his back, a net of searing violet energy pinning him down. Every struggle sent agonizing shocks through his body. Seraphina, her gown torn and one arm hanging at a grotesque angle, was held aloft in an invisible vice, the Sorcerer Supreme's magic choking the unlife from her. The Sorcerer Supreme, a gaunt figure named Malachar, stood before them, his voice a dry rasp that cut through the din. "You see? Your love, your unity, it is a fleeting spark. The eternal night of order is what this land needs. You are the last relics of a broken age." He raised a hand, dark energy coalescing into a blade of pure void. I will personally extinguish that spark. He chose Kael first. The void blade lifted high for a final, plunging strike. Seraphina met Kael's molten gold eyes. It wasn't fear she saw there, but a fierce, unwavering love. And an idea, desperate and brilliant, flashed between them, a memory of their Glen, of him teaching her to listen to the earth, of her teaching him to see the patterns in the dark. As Malachar began his downward thrust, Seraphina didn't fight the magic holding her. She pulled on it. With every ounce of her preternatural will, she yanked herself down, not to break free, but to alter her position. The sudden shift in resistance made Malachar's concentration flicker for a fraction of a second. It was all Kael needed. The searing net on him wavered. With a roar that held not just his own pain but the anguish of his entire pack, he didn't try to throw the net off. He drove his clawed hands into the earth beneath him. He channeled the raw, telluric power of the Lupin Peaks, the very heart of the moon-touched earth. The ground beneath Malachar's feet erupted. But it wasn't a violent explosion of rock and dirt. It was a geyser of pure, silver moonlight, stored for millennia in the deep stones, a power the sorcerer, who dealt only in stolen, twisted magic, had forgotten existed. The column of liquid moonlight struck Malachar, not burning him, but disrupting him. It was anathema to his stolen, shadow-based power. He screamed, a sound of pure astonishment and pain, as his intricate weavings of magic began to unravel like rotten thread. The void blade dissolved. The vice holding Seraphina vanished, and she dropped to the ground. Malachar was blinded, disoriented, his connection to his corrupt power source momentarily severed. Sarah, now! Kael bellowed, finally throwing off the sputtering, dying net. Seraphina didn't rise. From one knee, she moved with a vampire's impossible speed. But she held no weapon. Instead, she snatched up two fragments, a shard of a werewolf's moonglass dagger, and a splinter of a vampire's obsidian mirror. She crossed them in her hands, creating a crude, impromptu lens. She didn't look at Malachar. She looked at the full moon overhead, clear and bright in a break in the smoke. "For our world," she whispered. She angled the makeshift lens. A beam of concentrated pure moonlight, focused through the twin symbols of their united kingdoms, lanced out. It wasn't a weapon of destruction, but of purification. It struck Malachar in the chest. There was no explosion. There was a great, silent unmaking. The dark magic holding his form together dissolved. His scream was cut short as his body fragmented into 1,000 motes of dust, which were then scoured into nothingness by the relentless moonlight. The corrupt army of beasts shuddered and collapsed, their binding magic extinguished with their master. Silence fell, heavier than any battle cry. Panting, bleeding, Kael shifted back to his human form and stumbled to Seraphina's side. He fell to his knees and gathered her broken body into his arms. Around them, the surviving warriors of both species slowly lowered their weapons, staring in stunned silence at the spot where their greatest enemy had simply ceased to be. They had not won through overwhelming force. They had won because he was strength drawn from the earth, and she was precision guided by the night. Alone, they were powerful. But together, they created something entirely new, something an ancient sorcerer of hate could never comprehend, a perfect, united balance. And in the world of Nocturna, balance was the most powerful magic of all. The great doors of the obsidian spire's throne room, which had once slammed shut with such cruel finality, now stood open. Moonlight, once barred from this place, streamed in, mingling with the warm glow of torchlight. The hall was no longer a chamber of cold judgment, but a place of uneasy truce and fragile hope. A couple of months later, King Mordred welcomed an unusual visitor, a visitor he had long been expecting. It was right about time. With a happy grin, he sat regally upon his black diamond throne, but his posture was different. The rigid, unforbearing spine was gone, replaced by a weary slump. The battle against the true enemy, the sight of his daughter and the werewolf Alpha fighting as one perfect, devastating unit to save his people. It had shattered the foundations of his ancient prejudices. Before him stood Kael and Seraphina, hand in hand. Kael stood tall, not in challenge, but in quiet respect. Seraphina's gaze held not defiance, but a cautious, aching hope. The silence was heavy, filled with the ghosts of every harsh word and every year of hatred. Mordred's voice, when it finally came, was not the commanding rasp of a king, but the rough, gravelly tone of an old man who had seen his world upended. The sorcerers spoke of balance, he began, not looking at them, but at his own clenched hands on the arms of the throne. They sought to destroy it. But you. He finally lifted his head, his crimson eyes moving from their joined hands to their faces. You are that balance. I called it an abomination. I was wrong. He took a slow, unnecessary breath, the words clearly costing him a great price in pride. I let an ancient grudge blind me to the enemy at our gates. I saw a beast where there was nobility. I saw a rebellious child where there was courage and a heart greater than my own. His gaze settled on Seraphina. Daughter, I imprisoned you for loving. I sought to chain you to a fate worse than death for defying me. I placed my pride above your life. For that, I beg your forgiveness. Tears, cold and crystalline, welled in Seraphina's eyes. She had never, in all her centuries, heard her father apologize for anything. Mordred then turned to Kael. Alpha Kael. You fought for my people when I would have left yours to die. You protected my daughter when I was the one who endangered her. I called you a monster, while I acted like one. My hatred almost doomed us all. Your strength, and your heart, saved us. You have my thanks. And my apology. Kael gave a slow, respectful nod. The past is a battlefield, King Mordred. We can choose to keep fighting ghosts upon it, or we can choose to build something new upon it. I choose to build. A profound silence hung in the air, before Mordred spoke again, his voice stronger now, laced with a newfound resolve. The old treaty is ash. It was built on fear and separation. Let a new one be written today. Built on the alliance you two have forged in blood and trust. He stood, descending the dais until he stood before them. He looked at their intertwined hands. I cannot give you my blessing, he said, and for a heart-stopping second, Seraphina feared the old hatred had returned. But then he placed his cold, pale hands over theirs. For it was never mine to withhold. Your bond is yours alone, forged in a truth I was too stubborn to see. He squeezed their hands gently. But I grant it to you freely. And with it, my blessing. Be happy. Rule wisely. And know that the obsidian spire will forever stand with the lupin peaks, not as wary neighbors, but as allies. As family. He released their hands and took a step back, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips for the first time. Now go. Your people await you. And so does your future. As Kael and Seraphina turned to walk into the moonlit night, no longer as secret lovers but as acknowledged monarchs and partners, the weight of 1,000 years of hatred finally lifted from the realm. The bridge was built, not just of stone, but of a father's difficult, hard-won love, and the unbreakable bond that had conquered it all. They built a new court in the very glen where they first met, a place where moon-bloom flowers grew alongside night-blooming jasmine. Their children, possessing the warmth of the wolf and the graceful wisdom of the vampire, were the living proof that the strongest love is not that which exists in peace, but that which is forged in fire, conquers darkness, and chooses to build a bridge where a wall once stood. And they lived, not just happily, but gloriously, for all their endless days.